All right, welcome to another Bitcoin intelligence report, monetary mechanics. So, a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's dive right in. So, I chose this message as a way to show that Scott Bessent is already acting on the yield curve, and this dictates liquidity. So, he's sculpting the yield curve in such a way that it's kind of a balance between manipulation, but at the same time saving saving dollar liquidity. So everybody is grateful that he does it, even though they don't want to admit it. So kind of a tricky but interesting situation and very intentional. So basically the idea is for us to always have our minds into the yield curve. So the left side is always about short-term debt from the United States. The right side is longer-term debt. So you see here 1 month, 2 year, 5 year, 7 year, 10 year, and so on. The further out it's down the road, the less control the Treasury has. And keep in mind that the market wants short-term, and this is exactly what Scott Bessent is giving to them, because that is what drives liquidity. So the idea is simple. I use that as collateral. Prices are pretty stable because everything is short term. That means that I'm able to post that with another bank, leverage out of that. That helps me create more credit. And this is liquidity. And why is that important? That drives Bitcoin prices. That's as simple as that. So when we look towards the plumbing, so if you're new here, welcome. So this is the theme of monetary mechanics, how the plumbing actually creates liquidity and drives Bitcoin prices. And on the longer term, it's a little bit of a problem. It's all about inflation and growth expectations, and this can create some trouble there. So the idea is let's not issue too many long-term bills, long-term bonds. Let's focus on T-bills, which are short-term, and then let's balance it out. So that's basically the whole idea. And he already started pretty strong on the short end of the curve. So 4-week T-bills, which is very short term. So that means that they are going to expire by September. They just issued a record $100 billion. So that was the first time that it has been done. So the second one was 95 billion, but now we came to 100 billion. And this is exactly what is needed. It is needed for credit. It's also needed for stable coins. They really crave for this kind of debt. At the same time, the idea is also to refill the Treasury account, which was it's a current theme that we are currently tracking. So if you follow the other reports, you're going to see that the TGA, which is the Treasury General Account, was being drained because the U.S. could not issue any more debt because of the debt ceiling, but now it has been lifted. So now we are refilling it. But there are many things that can refill it. Taxes, for example. So tariffs are actually creating a tax effect. So that also helps refill that gap. But also the issuance of the T-bills, the collateral. So the idea here is to try to refill that in such a way that it doesn't create too many problems in the market. So we know that TGA refills tend to drain liquidity from the markets. That is liquidity negative, that brings Bitcoin prices down, the S&P down, and so on. So, but because Bessent is so aware of how it works, that's another reason why he chose the 4-week T-bill, so extremely short term, so that at the same time he's able to help that TGA refill, but not creating too much of a disturbance, because that is collateral that can generate a lot of liquidity and offset that movement. Do you see a little bit of that dual game that he's playing? So that's basically what he's doing. That's the part of the sculpture. So he's really sculpting the yield curve. And now we are actually going in a not at too fast of a pace, but still pretty decent because we are almost halfway. So we are at $464 billion and we still need to get to 850. So let's see how it goes. And so far, markets are still pretty strong. So nothing too crazy there. And at the same time, you also see that the administration is going to provide all support it needs. So if Trump wants to be bullish, it is a little bit silly not to be bullish. He's going to do everything in his power to make sure the market does not go down, not on his watch, right, so to speak. It's all about being the best president ever, or being remembered as the best president ever. That's how he thinks, and he's going to act exactly like that. Everybody's going to get rich again, so that just means that he will provide the liquidity, and if it drops, I would just see that as an opportunity. So you have currently an administration that is actively working towards that. At the same time, we also had the issuance of the Genius Act, all about stable coins, all about making the dollar more so to provide a bigger power from the dollar dominance around the world through stable coins, because those, specifically Circle and Tether, they are actually just starving for that kind of treasury. So they are becoming their own country, so to speak. So if you just take into consideration Tether and stable coins by themselves, they would be the 7th largest country on earth to actually get treasuries. So this is a way for the treasury to make sure that issuance is just going to be completely absorbed by the market. So it's not only about repo, which is generating credit and liquidity, but also to provide support to stable coins and that peg that is now provided. And this is another way for the dollar dominance to rise, because you can have more adoption, basically due to the fact that you can transact 24/7, no limits. So it's a very interesting scenario that just has more of a demand to the short end of the yield curve, which is absolutely fantastic here. On the long end, however, this is a problem. It's not really a collateral. You have to be sort of married to the U.S. government and to buy a long-term bond, and most of them are pretty old. So the idea is to expand a Treasury buyback program, so the government can buy their own debt in a way to not, it's not really in the way that the Japanese do, but it's more like think of it as a recycling. So if I already had some debt, long-term debt, it's not that great. So let me buy that back, but automatically issue new short-term debt, fresh. So we call that off the run, which are the older debt that is not really great because as collateral, because it's unstable, it fluctuates a lot of volatility there. To replacing that with on-the-run debt, which is freshly minted, so to speak, debt, which is exactly what the banking system requires. So they have done a few tests with $2 billion. Wasn't that great, but now the expansion is going to happen. So expect more buybacks in the future. This is also liquidity positive. So this is the average maturity, if you take everything in the yield curve, is going to go down. So the longer term debt is still going to go down, but they need to issue a lot of short-term debt to significantly lower the average, because the average so far should be around 74 months on average. So a lot of buffer, so to speak, on that matter. Also, we have a huge movement at the Fed. I mean, we don't need to tell that the FOMC meeting was a complete disaster. We also discussed that in our previous report, because, I mean, it makes absolutely no sense to have a pre-scheduled meeting if you don't have the data, right? Where were these people with the jobs data and the huge revision downwards that just got the BLS person fired. So Trump's not happy about that, and now it's all a matter of creating new jobs and getting the support that quote unquote we need. I put that on quotes because cutting interest rates does not help, even though Trump is pressuring on that. Everybody's pressuring on that. Too late, Powell, right? And now, since Trump cannot directly fire Powell, he's just providing more and more pressure by announcing Dr. Stephen Miran, current chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. So he would just take temporarily a vacated seat into the Federal Reserve until January 31st next year. So they're still going to be searching for a permanent replacement. So it's not the one that is going to replace Powell, but pay attention to the narrative. So if you follow FinTwit, for example, many of the board members, they release opinions, they release some stuff. So there is a lot of dissidence going on that is fracturing the Fed. So it's a way to provide, to actually take over the Fed. That's the idea. So the Fed 2.0 is a Fed that is completely absorbed by the Treasury. So Trump and Scott Bessent just wish to have control of the Fed so that they can do both monetary policies and also fiscal policies under the same roof. So that's basically what they're trying to achieve. But again, let's not put too much hope into just cutting interest rates, because mostly people are just concerned about mortgages. Is my mortgage going to be more affordable with lower interest rates? And they think that the curve is just going to follow whatever happens when they cut rates. If the Fed cuts rates, then the 10-year yield, which is the actual reference for mortgages, would also go down. But it cannot be further from the truth. Many times, and it already happened last year, the 10 as soon as Powell cut 50 basis points, so 0.5%, when they actually pivoted, the 10-year went up. It's all about growth and inflation expectations. So, and if you don't like the decision, it's just going to go up. People dump a little bit of that debt and it goes up. So let's not be too excited about that, because normally when the Fed cuts, it's already too late. It's always too late. So, and again, after 2008, monetary mechanics does not work like that. But it's impossible for you to be working at the Fed and admitting that there is no such thing as monetary policy. I mean, we have to tell the truth. It's not how monetary systems work nowadays. So very interesting scenario here. So let's follow that along. And of course, the person who is actually the most probable so far to replace Powell would be Christopher Waller from the Fed. So, and this here just a meme from Kong. So hawkish Waller becomes Fed chair. Dovish Waller becomes Fed chair. Hope that helps. So he's probably going to be the guy, but of course we have to wait and see until it's made official. And Waller is sort of a dissident to. He does not think exactly like Powell's, and it has been thinking differently. So this also creates more fracture at the Fed. So Jerome Powell's life is going to be very interesting to the last months until he leaves the Fed. But it's still May 2026. So we still got almost a year there to see, and a lot of stuff can happen. Also, the dollar tells us a story, and it has been since the beginning of July, started a reversal. So we have to wait and see what happens. So it bottomed. So the DXY bottomed at 96, and now it's been, of course, with some volatility here and there, but from 96 to 98 so far in August. So let's see if that trend continues. But it's a shift in trend, and this is liquidity negative. So DXY down, it means that the world is more leveraged. There's more dollars for people to serve their current debt And this is good for liquidity, also good for Bitcoin as well. When the trend goes the other way, and if it goes too quick, too significantly, this means that there is a problem with credit. There is a problem with leverage. People are not able to make those payments because the whole world, especially outside of the United States, where it has way more debt than inside the United States, is leveraged in dollars. So you contracted credit in a currency that you're not able to print. Only the US can do it through fiscal spending. So that's why Scott Bessent has a lot of power there, but not the rest of the world. So if you're not able to make those payments, then dollars become scarcer, and we tend to go towards collateral and produce credit and more credit to pay for it. But banks risk their own businesses if they lend to somebody who's not able to pay it back. That is the reflection that you have on the DXY. So let's follow it to see if it's another kind of move, like a dollar wrecking ball, that it starts swinging back again, because it always does over time. And this is when the dollar creates problems, not when it goes down, it's when it goes up. But let's wait and see. I'm still short-term bearish, but that could change. So let's see what happens afterwards. So also about very interesting, so Trump has signed the executive order for 401k retirement plans in the United States to offer Bitcoin investments, actually crypto investments, alternative investments, including Bitcoin as well, for sure. It's very interesting to know, and this is something that I can definitely help with my experience, because I have worked with a record keeper called Empower, and with over 12 million participants. And despite this news being excellent, it's fantastic for Bitcoin, bullish. Do not expect Bitcoin to just go to $250,000 in a few months, because even though there is $9 trillion that could not access Bitcoin before due to regulations, and now they can, it doesn't mean that they will. And I can give you many examples why. So I would work with many people who basically had had absolutely no idea what to invest in, or don't even trust Bitcoin, especially boomers, right? And this is where most of the money actually is, because Gen Z or younger people do not really trust in 401ks in the first place. But not only that, when you start a new job and you set up your 401k, most people don't choose any kind of funds. They don't even know what they're invested in, because they're too busy with their actual new job. So I've spoken with many participants, like 60-year-old people, 70-year-old people. They had no clue what it was invested in, and I found out it was 100% in the S&P. Of course, they made some money, but they just don't know. On the other hand, even if you want to, and your current plan does not offer any funds that have Bitcoin, it doesn't mean that they're going to introduce it right away. You need to have a plan that actually adopts those funds. Some funds are not even options in 401ks. So you have like 3 or 4 choices, and nobody's going to think about that, because the cost to provide a 401k as an employer is actually higher, and some employers just want to save costs, but at least offer some kind of option. So plans may differ a lot. There's dozens of thousands of different plans, and only when you actually get terminated or you switch jobs, you have more options of what to do with the money, right? There is always 4 options in 401ks. I would repeat that ad nauseum. So either you withdraw, you cash out, right? You pay your taxes, or you pay a penalty if you're under 59.5, or you roll it over to a new employer and you hope that employer offers Bitcoin in their 401ks, or you just keep it in the plan and it just stays there. Some people actually forget they have 401k, which is amazing. And the fourth option is a rollover to an individual retirement account, what we call an IRA. So when you do that, IRAs would be the best options to offer actually Bitcoin, and that provides some control. But The percentage of people who are actually going to do that, I'm not too sure. It's going to be too high. But it does not mean that nobody's going to transition to Bitcoin, because many younger people who were actually frustrated with their 401ks requested many withdrawals because they said, look, you guys don't offer Bitcoin. And all of a sudden, you have them withdraw their funds. You have paying penalties, and they don't care because they just want to buy Bitcoin, because they believe that even if it's a tax-deferred kind of account, they will get better returns but with just buying Bitcoin and getting that pain out of the way. So that's how many Americans think based on my own experience. So I hope that can help you assess how actually bullish that news is. But it's for sure, it's fantastic news. And also, so this is all about the United States, but China, which is also driving a lot of the world's liquidity along with the U.S., we had some significant news here about what we call the fourth plenum. So it's that big meeting that they have on the CCP, the Communist Party of China, to discuss the 5-year plan. And I actually got access to the official document, but it's really interesting what they say about how the meeting emphasized the need to effectively unleash the potential of domestic demand. So they're still struggling with demand. They're still very export-based, very industrialized, and they are still on a deflationary spiral over there, and they need to make sure to stimulate consumption. If you so as the document says, special actions to boost consumption must be thoroughly implemented. That means more liquidity. That means lower interest rates, zero interest rates, maybe negative interest rates. We don't know yet, but a lot of liquidity being pushed to the system, and that is very positive for Bitcoin prices as well. So let's see what actually happens, because it has not happened yet. It will happen in October, but it's interesting to see how the leader Xi Jinping thinks and how that also drives liquidity. So very interesting week. But okay, what should we do about it? So what is my current stance? So I took 3 of the most important assets. Of course, Bitcoin, very bullish, so still bullish. But again, narratives can provide some turbulence. Maybe the TGA will provide some turbulence. So far, Scott Bessent has done a great job. So it's I would say that it is unfortunate, because the more turbulence we have short term, the more opportunities we have to just buy more Bitcoin. So it's a great barometer for global liquidity. I would just check the narratives. Anything short term, especially if it's bearish, I would take the opportunity, because the fundamentals do not change. Fiscal policies here, and the government will just support markets. And this is exactly what Bitcoin is about. S&P 500, same thing. You've seen Trump. How can he be bearish when he's bullish, right? So, but again, policy and narrative support. The TGA refill being smooth, so it's exactly what we discussed as well. And the DXY, so let me get out of the screen here. So, and the DXY, the dollar, still, despite the reversal, the longer term trend is still bearish. But I'm going to keep an eye on it, because it's still just a dampener, but not really a problem yet. So let's see if it flips. So far, extremely risk on, and let's always check it out weekly. And I thank you so much for your attention. Your support means a lot to us, and I hope this information is very useful for you and your investment journey on Bitcoin. All right, see you in the next video.